Hello, everybody. My name is James, joined as ever by my good friend Steve, and welcome to our very first episode of a brand new venture that we're calling Readers Digress. This is a book club, essentially spawned out of our film review site, which is on this same channel, so you will find it. We
Can't miss it. Can't miss it.
Yeah, it's right
It's
here.
right there. It's right there.
It's what you're
There's
watching.
videos. Yeah.
This is just another video, and we just decided that we wanted to start. Well, we both read a lot of books, and we thought we might try and coordinate some of that, read the same book, and then talk about it in much the same way that we've been doing with the films and the TV shows over the last couple of years. Inspired by the Fall of the House of Usher TV show on Netflix, which is streaming now, and our review is linked somewhere. We thought that we would read Edgar Allan Poe's The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym.
Played brilliantly by Mark Hamill in the House of Usher, currently on Netflix, which is, well, as you said, inspired us to read this. And although you said, James, that we read a lot, one of the things I mentioned in the video, and I encourage you, if you haven't, we have a short up that explains why we started this club. And that I've got tired of the fact that I used to read a lot, but I've fallen into the victim of scrolling and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and reading articles there. And I'm really realizing my consumption of good novels and biographies and the things that have always given me a lot of life has just been limited. So when you suggested, why don't we do a book club? I just jumped on it, and no better first book than having just done Fall of the House of Usher than looking into the life of Arthur Gordon Pym.
That's right, yeah, because coming out of that show, the one big takeaway from it is I want to read more Edgar Allan Poe. I want to go back and read all the short stories, quick stories. But then I realized, oh, well, there is that novel, that one novel that he wrote that I hadn't read, and I had a copy of it sitting here on my many shelves that make me look so intelligent and well read, but don't tell anybody I haven't actually read some of them. And
but they're a projection of who you are, James.
And who I want to
that's
be.
That's it. It's who you aspire to be.
And again, another good reason for doing this book club is to read more of these.
Absolutely.
So Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. But so Steve, initial thoughts?
Surprisingly short book. Obviously, you had the physical copy because I wanted to get it quick and start reading it. I downloaded it on my Kindle, and I was watching the percentages going through fairly. I thought, oh, this is going to be a fairly quick read, and by and large, I enjoyed this book. Listen, for a audience in the 1800s, I kept thinking this is going to be spectacular, like going out on the high seas and doing daring do's that have mutiny and cannibalism and native populations for readers who had no exposure to any of these lives and this wonder in the world. However, as a 21st century person who has by and large explored much of the world, I thought there was strength in this book, and there was other parts that I thought, oh man, I don't really need another 3 pages explaining the latitude and longitude of circling this particular island. I don't know how you felt about that, James.
Yeah, no, much the same way. I mean, yes, as you read it, you're immediately reminded of sort of Robinson Crusoe and Moby Dick, other works like that, even sort of Treasure Island and those kind of boys' own adventures of the period. And you, yes, much like you just said, you are reminded that this was fantasy for many people, and Poe didn't go down to the South Pole and research any of this. I mean, it's interesting to note that he did cross the Atlantic as a young boy. He did go from New York to Liverpool or whatever, and apparently it was quite a unforgettable sort of 6-week journey or whatever it was. And he sort of did mention the fact that it had a bit of a sort of an impact on him. So he knows what it's like to be at sea for a long period of time. But inevitably, a lot of it is fiction, and a lot of the strange and curious creatures and people that he meets along the way are fantastical, are made up and deliberately so. And so you have to kind of read it almost like science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting because if you read a lot of kind of quote unquote old science fiction from like the 50s and 60s and what have you. That, where they're still wrestling with how do I write a science fiction book about going to new planets and meeting aliens or whatever, or even
native
older
cultures on other
yeah,
planets. Yeah.
or even older stuff like Princess of Mars and those those Barzoom books like John Carter with the John Carter character. Those books are written like the old kind of travelogue adventures that this is one of. So it's kind of this sort of an anachronistic thing where I've read a lot of the more of the stuff that was inspired directly or indirectly by this than this stuff beforehand. And so that's it. All of that is to say, yeah, for the most part, I did enjoy it. Obviously, it's written in a very particular voice, which is, I find, a little more difficult to read these days. If I'm completely honest, I'm not the world's greatest reader, and it is a little old timey in a way that I kind of have to read it slowly or reread sections because I didn't quite catch first time round what happened. A bit of further reading revealed that a lot of people have that problem with this book. That actually there's a lot of holes in the story and contradictions. Characters are referenced who have already died, and things like that. But by and large, yeah, I did enjoy. And then I think the other big sort of negative I have about it is it doesn't have the kind of gothic creepiness that a lot of the Poe short stories have. I don't think.
No.
It's kind of swinging for something slightly different, and that's all good and well. But if someone had handed it to me and said, "Who wrote this?" I'm not sure I would have immediately gone to Edgar Allan Poe.
No, I totally agree. I think other than the cannibalism part, and I remember thinking, oh, James is going to like this part. People eating people. And actually, though, that was one of the portions of the book that actually had me engaged 120%, because he really created an atmosphere of what it would be like that conditions have gotten so dire that you are willing to contemplate eating another member of your party for the survival of the rest of the remainders, and how they draw straws in order to see who's going to die. But what I found almost that happens in this novel is that very brutal actions or very pivotal moments happen like this. Like they just happen. Like, once the straw is drawn that the guy's going to die, somebody immediately sticks him in the back. He's dead. And they move on and they've eaten him. And I'm thinking, wait, hold on. Shouldn't we have like about another 10 to 15 pages drawing this out? Because you've done such a brilliant job kind of creating the tension of what's going to happen in this moment. And then suddenly you've kind of shot your load really quick. And now you've gone on to something else. And I thought, wait, haven't we just eaten somebody?
Right. Yeah, no, I find that is very true in a number of different ways with this kind of, or writing from this period. I think it's one of the things I struggle with is, as you alluded to, there's pages and pages of descriptions about the rigging of the ship and and all this kind of stuff, and the quality of the woodwork and all of that. But then when action happens, it's gone in a sentence, and that's the kind of stuff that I can sometimes miss and be like, wait, what? Where's that character gone? What's happened? I knew this book had cannibalism, and I just assumed it would be that they would run aground on an island of cannibals or whatever and be chased. I think what makes that moment so great is how he humanizes it, how it is just a decision they come to between them.
Yes.
And ironically, it's the guy who proposes it who ends up being the one that they eat.
Yeah.
But so that was a great sort of skill in the storytelling, I thought.
Yeah. No, there was, I agree with what you said, in that some of the descriptions got a little monotonous. At the beginning, when he stows away on board the ship, there's vast description of the dynamics of how this secret place has been established on the ship, and damned if I understand how this operated. Like he goes into great detail. It obviously is very clear in his mind, but even in describing it, it's a little bit clunky for me.
And ultimately, it's quite irrelevant. really.
Well, yeah, it's largely meaningless to the narrative of what's happening. I mean, this book can be kind of broken up into three parts. There is the mutiny, the we're lost at sea, starving to death, we got to eat somebody, and now, oh, we've been picked up, and now we're going to go explore far away native culture,
Right.
somewhere else. And but having, even though there are drawbacks in this is hardly a perfect novel for a 21st century reader, in my opinion. There was moments that really Poe really is able to capture the emotion and the elation you would feel if you were starving and suddenly got some food. When they go into the hold, when they find the remains of the ship, and they go in and they find a couple jars of olives. Suddenly I'm tasting those olives. Like they just, oh my God, to have those olives. And they think they find was it a pig? They find a live pig. What was it?
Yeah, well, there's definitely some cured ham or something like that.
But there was something alive.
Oh,
wasn't there some? That's right. It was turtles. There was live turtles that they
which
find.
have water. Great, they store a lot of water in their bodies.
So they're able to penetrate the sacks and get water. So there's moments in this where Poe does a really good job of conveying what sheer hunger will drive a man to do, and the just euphoria that comes when you have just a morsel of food. So there was moments of that I enjoyed, and I was kind of like getting into. But like you said, there's far too many portions of this book that are just descriptive in nature that don't really help. But probably to a 12-year-old boy living in England or America who's had no exposure to the high seas and the vast oceans and the storms and how a ship operates, they'd probably be eating this up, but maybe not as much as you and I.
Yeah, I guess sort of the wonders of the ship itself, seamanship, it was exciting and alien enough at the time, that it was almost like describing, a spaceship or a rocket ship, and how
I was just thinking that, James. That was exactly what I was thinking. If we were given a book about a boy that went off onto a starship exploring outer space, and they were giving us details of how the ship operated and how, we'd probably be eating it up, whereas a person in that living in that would be like, who cares about that,
For sure. I mean, and it's almost like, I've read Moby Dick and I've read Victor Hugo as well. Moby Dick, if you don't know how to man a sailing ship after reading Moby Dick, then you haven't been paying attention. There is so much of that book is taken up with just, this is how you batten down the mizzen and what have you. And Victor Hugo,
the mizzen mast.
And Victor Hugo's the same. I've read Les Mis and I've read Hunchback of Notre Dame, and both of those just go off on 100-page tangents about nonsense. I remember there's a sequence in Les Mis where Jean Valjean is being chased by Javert, and he jumps down through a manhole cover into the sewer, and then it goes next chapter and does an entire chapter on the history of the Parisian sewer system, and then at the end of that chapter it's like, and then Javert found himself in the darkness, and you're like, wait, what just happened here? And and Notre Dame is a 500-page book, and the story doesn't start for 250 pages. For the first 250 pages, it's just the history of the cathedral. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. I've also read Les Mis. I think the first 75 to 100 pages is the background on the bishop, which is absolutely fascinating. And then you realize the bishop, although a pivotal part in the journey of Jean Valjean, he's not but what some people would have been a third of the novel, he devotes to this I shouldn't say minor character, because he has such a pivotal role, but you learn all about the bishop's life and everything he's done, and then you realize, okay, he's going to be kind of sidelined, and we're moving on with Jean Valjean now.
Yeah, no, it is kind of just a fascinating sort of change in style of storytelling, actually. And I don't miss it. It's fascinating. And the examples I've read, but if you are unprepared for that, it can be quite the blow. And there are moments in this, albeit very short novel, where you're kind of just like, okay, moving on, get to the story.
Start eating people. Wonder, you got to get the good parts. what makes me wonder then is a 22nd or 23rd century reader, what they're going to be looking at our books and thinking the tropes and things that we use we think are so innovative and so exciting. They're going to be thinking, oh my gosh, I could hardly plow through that, John Grisham novel.
well, if there are even long form novels at all, maybe, they're all, not to sound like two grumpy old men, but you see, there's so much discourse about, about social media and keeping everything tight and brief, and this many characters or this many seconds on the videos or whatever. This idea of sort of long form storytelling is being kind of eroded in one medium or another.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe in 100 years from now, the notion of a 400-page novel, regardless of who wrote it or what it's about, might be like sort of such a archaic concept that people are like, oh, we don't do that anymore.
We just don't do that. And
yeah,
let's and that's part of what this book club is meant to be an antidote to, James. We are trying to bring back. We are trying to put the scrolling aside. We're trying to put the quick Twitter articles in the background and bring to the forefront the great novels, the great biographies, stories.
I just think there's a place. Yeah. There's a place for all these different kinds of consuming of media, and I don't want to see reading go out of the window. I mean, I don't mind if we read brand new novels, that were published this year. This is not an opportunity. It's not an opportunity, but it's also, this is not designed to sort of preserve great works of hundreds of years ago necessarily. It's more, I think, just to keep us reading and to talk about what we are reading.
Absolutely. I mean, although I don't think we've talked about exactly what our next few books will be.
We haven't.
We may or may not connect them to films, but there's a lot of modern films that are based on modern novels that I'd be more than happy to explore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think if there is a tenuous link to something that we are watching or something we have seen, then that's interesting. If there isn't, then there isn't, and that's fine too. But I think we're both of a mind that this is gonna be worthwhile regardless. We're not quite sure what it's going to be exactly or where it's going to go. Much like Arthur Pym, we're just getting on board a ship and setting sail, and what will be. And if we end up just drifting into the white plumes of whatever, we should talk about the ending. We haven't talked about the ending of the book.
And we haven't talked about the beginning either, where they basically, his buddy gets hammered, takes a boat out in the middle of the night.
They go joyriding essentially in a boat.
And they're absolutely, his buddy's absolutely plastered. And I sympathize with that because I've had my moments.
You've been drunken sailing. I've been drunk on a boat. I wasn't in charge of the boat.
Yeah. It's
I think we've been drunk on the same boat, but we weren't at the helm.
No, thank God.
Yeah. But I mean, the ending is it's open-ended, it's abstract, it's vague. There is that kind of like afterward note that sort of says, "Oh yes, the final chapters were missing," which is obviously part of the conceit. But I like how it ends. It's like the fog opens up and he drifts in. Is he dead? Is he dying? Is he going to a better place? Is he being consumed by the earth? Who knows? I mean, I know that this book was a huge inspiration to Lovecraft.
Yeah.
And that a lot of his sort of In the Mountains of Madness and a lot of his kind of more adventurous stories, kind of big, almost take off from this point. They kind of begin where this book ends. And so it was kind of quite satisfying for me.
Well,
that it ends so openly and so ambiguously.
Well, you think it ended open and ambiguously, but no, we know exactly where Arthur Gordon Pym ends up. He becomes the lawyer for Roderick Usher. He knows where the bodies are buried, and so we know where he ends up.
This is true. Yes, he ends up on Netflix is where he
Netflix, and Mark Hamill plays him wonderfully.
Were you picturing
So,
Mark Hamill all the way through when you were reading it?
no, I wasn't actually. I was a more young, daring person. Yes,
Yes, for sure, for sure. But yeah, no, I like the mystery of the. I like the open ending. I like he's just continuing on into the unknown. You know,
absolutely. Yeah,
where more
yeah,
adventures might befall him. I kind of like that.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
need solid answers.
I'm the same. Give me enough. Give me enough ending that I feel satisfied, but I
Mm,
don't have to have every question answered. It's a lot like life.
absolutely, it is just
Mm.
the next step on the journey, and it's definitely an ending. You know, although
Yeah,
there
it
is that
is.
kind of afterwards where they kind of give the impression that the ending's missing. No, no, no. It is an ending,
Yeah.
and I like it.
And those natives were bastards, man. Those guys were,
Yeah.
yeah, they were pretty evil.
Well,
It's one thing to come out and attack them right away. It's another thing to spend a whole week doing the
toying with them.
whole hospitality thing, trading, doing all this stuff, and then suddenly,
Mm. I'm not so sure that I side or I side against the invaded uh people in this instance. I think I'm on their side. I think they were just protecting their homeland against some
uh,
evil colonists.
no, see, you're British. I'm American. I'm
Well,
like,
that's exactly.
no,
I'm British. I should be all about colonialism, but you
no, but
know,
you got colonial guilt. I don't have
I
that.
maybe
So
that's what it is. Maybe that's what
yeah,
it
yeah,
is.
it's you're not the first, you're not the last that I've had to, have this little chat with.
On that note,
On that note, uh, I enjoyed the book. I'm very glad that I read it. It, like I said, it's not without its flaws for all the things that we mentioned, but I'm really glad it was the first book of our book club, James.
yes, likewise. It had been on my shelf for a while. I'm glad we got to it. I'm not entirely sure where we're going to go from here. Perhaps in future episodes, at this point, we will be prepared enough to announce what our
Yeah.
next video is going to be, what our next book is going to be. I think we've cautiously said we're going to do one of these a month, just to give ourselves plenty of time to essentially the flexibility of schedule to read. You should be able to read anything, I think, within that time frame, give or take. But for now, we do not know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if people want to know, let us know in the comments, and as soon as we've made the decision, then we will share that information.
Yeah, and hopefully in the future when we can announce it, you could read it with us and be
There you
part
go.
of the book club. I think ultimately, I think that's the direction we should look to go, James. But we'll see how that develops.
Absolutely. In the meantime, this has been Reader's Digress, and we'll see you at the library.
See, if I said we'll see you at the movies, I'd get in all kinds of trouble. I tell you, the things you get away with.